Hello, hello. We're going to bring Michael right on here. Hello, Mike.
Hello,
I'm going
Leslie.
to try to get this background down because it is a little distracting. How's that?
Beautiful, like it's lost in space.
That's exactly.
Mhm.
Well, welcome to Author Spotlight. We come to you every Friday at noon, and we're brought to you by Victoria Shoe Press, which is a boutique publishing services company. My name is Leslie Cottrell. I'm a book writing coach and the COO at Victoria Shoe Press. Now, you can find us streaming right now on YouTube, and if you're watching us there, I would love it if you would share this and like it and subscribe to the channel. You can also find us on Facebook on the Victorious You page and the Books to Business and Beyond page. So I am really excited for today's guest. We're going to go off our usual routine a little bit today, and I'm so excited we are. We usually talk about nonfiction books, but today we get to talk with Michael Pope, who is the author of the Lincoln Ghetto series, which is historical fiction. And I have a little soft spot for historical fiction because I have a few rattling around in my mind. So I may pick your brain a little bit about the process today, too, Mike. But welcome to the stage, Michael Pope. I am so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Thank you for inviting me, and it's an honor to be here. I really appreciate you taking the time and to listen to my crazy fictional world story of Lincoln's Ghetto.
It is a crazy world. Yes, it is. So I want to read your bio, and so people can understand a little bit more about you. And before I start, I want to say thank you for your service. This is an impressive um, history that you have. So Michael Pope retired from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Air Force after 30 years of work in the federal government public affairs areas, military and civilian. His works covered a wide range of journalism and public affairs projects for various U.S. government communications agencies in the U.S. and abroad, including coverage of the 9/11 attacks on New York City, Hurricane Katrina, Southwest border immigration, international illegal narcotics distribution, and U.S. trade violation issues. The son of a 40-year U.S. State Department diplomatic journalist, he's a Washington, D.C. native, father of four, a lifelong drummer and volleyball player and coach. And Mike says, I never met a volleyball I liked or a drum head I hated.
That,
So, in
that,
addition to this, Michael,
mm.
what's one sort of interesting or quirky thing about you that you didn't mention in your bio?
Oh my goodness! Now that's a quirky thing.
Or
Um,
or both.
oh my God! Outside of the fact that I crave watermelon and ice cream now that I'm retired, I didn't know that that was going to be a thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, sometimes people tell me I thrive in chaos. So if that's not quirky, I don't know what is. So you can take those two with you to the bank. Somehow chaos is likes to find me, and I like to jump in the middle of it. In the Air Force early on, before I got into the public affairs space, I was a firefighter. So yeah, maybe that gave birth to the chaotic desire. When people were in need or when things were hot, I was first in, last out kind of guy. But
Mhm.
yeah, and then I moved over to the communications and public affairs space, and I took that same mentality with me. So I never said no to a TDY when they said, "Hey, you want to go cover this mess?" I'm like, "Yeah, where and we're not the news because we're federal government, but
Right.
I attack things kind of like that, not to show the bad side of the government, but to show what we're really involved in. So
Yeah.
maybe chaotic lover and an ice cream craver. My
Well,
wife
the
can, yeah.
chaotic lover in you is clearly evident in your writing.
Mm.
It's very there's a lot going on all at the same time. It's very fast paced and exciting for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a lot going on, and there's some keep up stuff going on. This is my first time out the gate with this fiction novel writing. And so I don't want to confuse the readers, but it's hard. I get deep into dialogue, as you notice. I like I like the dialogue part.
You do.
And so sometimes I feel like, you're like, who's talking right now? Because he just told him this and that and the other. But it gets fast, and I get to rip in on writing dialogue, because there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of buildup. It is a series, so it's a cliffhanger. So as you saw at
Mhm.
the end of number one, you got to know, well, what happened. What about and I get to that, and then it takes off on another gear. So each book, I shift gears until we get to hyperdrive in book four.
So, as you said, this is a series, and I want to read just a little bit
Hmm.
for those that are not familiar with your work about Lincoln's Ghetto series. And I'm just going to read this as it's written so I don't miss anything, because I would definitely miss something because there's so much going on. So, what do you get when dirty lawyers, the Chicago mob, and the Vatican are hell bent on snatching incredible riches away from an innocent, unsuspecting young heir at any cost? What happens when they get confronted by a tough South Side Chicago squad driven to protect that heir at all costs? You get a web of high level controversy mixed with double handed lies and deceit. You also get dogged street level jurisprudence ready to deliver a gut punch to protect and save their golden child. This 4-book series digs into the ugly underbelly U.S. history and unleashes some of the worst DNA that fuels many of its citizens today. Fueled by the possibilities of riches beyond belief, the lucky SOBs who can do enough damage to snatch the bounty away will not be unscathed. The story takes you on a trip into locations not well known in Illinois where unwanted information needs to remain suppressed.
Yeah.
Boom.
And, yeah. So if you like that, it's on. It's on like popcorn, like we say.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
So I've got to ask you, and I usually do ask this the first question because it's an important one, but it feels so much more powerful when I ask you because you took on such a vast amount of rich history and combined it with fiction. So why did you want to write this? I guess this is a multi-part question. Why did you want to write this? Why did you want to write it in the genre of historical fiction as opposed to writing a nonfiction book?
Wow. Well, multi-layered answer there. And it's twofold. So obviously, like I explained about my chaotic background, so to speak, um, a lot of this started with a dream, a really vivid dream that I had. And I woke up in the middle of the night and told my wife about it. I was like, "Oh my God, this was real. I was there." And that's the action part that happens in book three. And so from there, I backed up and went from job to job, and landed finally in DC at headquarters. And I would take the train to work, and I started just writing, just spitballing. We call it the seat of our pants writing. And from chapter one. So trying to craft a story around this dream. However, I didn't know which genre it would be in, but most of my readings as a reader were thrillers. Big Clive Cussler guy who digs into history and fiction. Obviously, the big boys, Patterson and Grissom and Robert Grace and all these guys, James Bond lover, and also I love the Godfather series and gangster movies. And so, given all of that and my background, growing up as a kid, my DNA was stamped. I call it tattooed in the civil rights era because I was born in 1960 in Washington D.C. I mean, oh my God! And if you're of our age, America was a mess back then, in the
Yes.
60s, right? And so everything was on the table, and my father was in the middle of it as a government executive, which meant he couldn't take a stand, but he was in the middle of the chaos also. And to include African affairs, because a lot of West African countries wanted freedom back then. He was in Africa's bureau of the State Department. He's the only black guy there. And
Wow.
so, hey, you guy, you go cover Africa, kind of thing. And so, living here, you can't escape the politics and the civil unrest. So, a lot of that stuff was stamped down in my head, and how the television shows and the tropes that we were throwing at us throughout life as a kid. That's what I took with me into adulthood. So when I got to this point, I learned a lot. I mean, in the military and the government, So I'm always been a student. So I've always was in class in the military. You know, I was the labeled the nerd, always going to class. Hey, you're not going to party? No, I got class, man. It's free. Sometimes I'm taking classes in the military. So, but I love to learn about history in the United States, especially. So, as growing up in the civil rights era and then digging into history deeper as an adult, those things really grained on me. So now my why is, hey, not only did I have this dream about this crazy thing that happened, but why are we like this? And why are these things happening, you know, with the Catholic Church and the mob and lawyers and legal wranglings and lies and deceit? Why is this the case? So I dug back and I read about Lincoln and where he stood on a lot of this stuff. And so I'm like, you know what, people need to know. And maybe my job is to teach people something that maybe they didn't know.
Mm,
No, I'm not going to be James Patterson, but you know what? I can teach you something about some things that are maybe some general information that you may be low information on. And hey, go dig and find out for yourself too, because I'm going to give you a QR code and a link that you can go find more about interracial adoption. You can find more about, all these things that happen that I throw at you, including the birth of AIDS when the Boston Globe, I think, dropped the story on the Catholic Church scandal back in
right.
whenever that was. So I throw those things at you throughout the book. It's like, oh shoot! So between the chapters, you get a history lesson, just a short one. And
I
if you
know.
want to dig further, hey, hit the link. So I said, hey, I can craft an entertaining tale and provide people with some knowledge. And you know what? Maybe my father would be proud of that. So maybe that's why. You know, I'm just trying to please my dad after all these years.
Well, I think he'd be very proud. Did you know initially that this was a series and not just a single book?
Absolutely not. I had one thing, and then I got into a writing training program on probably day one when I retired. Just to say, you know what, I'm going for it. Telling my wife, I'm going for it. I'm all in. And I had it already kind of scribed out and down. And when I got in this class of new writers, everyone's asking a bazillion questions, and we're drinking from a fire hose to try to be self-published. It was like overwhelming. I said, well, I already have mine done. And everybody else was like, I'm trying to get my first chapter written. I'm like, I'm done, you know. So I guess I had a coach, and I wasn't totally done, but and through the months I finished it, and versus years. And I said, hey, I got 195,000 words. She says, you need to break that up. I'm like,
Whoa.
why? So because that's how it works in self-publishing. You do a series and make it a cliffhanger and keep people interested in what you're doing. Because if you're a one-off writer of a one-off book, good luck. You better have some killer sales and marketing techniques going on that's going to sell your fiction, which you're jumping in a fiction pool that's deep as the Pacific Ocean, you know. So I'm like, okay, how do I do that and break it in? Well, find out where it naturally breaks, find some breaking points, and then expand upon those and do your writing thing. And now you get now my I'm done was like, oh man, I'm starting all over again.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then it became okay, book one. How are we gonna do this? So then I got down there here in the laboratory and got busy with trying to break it up into pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you how you really decide where to end each book, because I gotta say,
Mm,
like, no, don't end it right now. No.
sorry.
So that's got to be so challenging, because that's a fine line.
Absolutely. Where do you leave a reader off? And I'm not one to have read a bunch of series unless they're comic
Yeah.
books. So yeah, I went to my whiteboard over here and said, okay, where are the divisions of action? So easily I can say from book one to book two, it was setting. So setting changes in book two. We move out of the city, we
Yeah.
hit small town America, and it stays there throughout. So, okay, that's a natural break for one. But what happened? So I got to build up these backstories of my characters, of the main characters, good guy and the bad guy, especially, and the son. So as you saw, the bad guy is really disgusting,
Mm.
and he gets more so, and then the father and the son. So I broke as you saw in the three ring circus. I did a little something different. So in ring one, we've got this going on. This bad guy, and this is his
Mhm.
backstory and his mess and why he is who he is. Then in ring two, we have the son, I think it was, or just no, the father. was in ring 2, who happened to be a student of the bad guy. And then in ring 3, there's a tie. And in ring 3, there's the son, who's just this rambunctious elementary school kid who has, he's a kid doing kid stuff. So that's how I broke those up. I said, well, that's where we'll stop it. And then we need a slap. Something bad has to happen at the end. And we had a slap. And then that was I had to create that one. that last one, I had to create all of that. That wasn't in the original. So, and then that was a break. And then 2, when we moved to the setting change, it was all about that setting. And that's when I dug deeper into historical information about Abraham Lincoln's early life and where he's from. So it's not all about Lincoln. It's just about, he's from this town, America. Hey, hello. He's from this town. It's called Lincoln, Illinois. He's not from Springfield. He lived here. He left from here. He was a judge. He got his law degree. He was a lawyer here. All these things about this town were incredibly fascinating when I went to this town. So I drove out there with my wife twice. I got into my journalism mode. I interviewed Joe on the street, but we went during events, the Logan County Fair that had lots of people there. So I met a lot of people. And what did they do? Oh my God, look at all this. This is great. This is great fodder. I'm taking notes like crazy. And then we go back to something called the Lincoln Rail Splitting Competition that happens annually. It's coming up next month, where guys that chop 1,000-pound trees into 8 or 16 fence rails by hand with one axe and one. Yeah, that's a competition. They get $1,500 to the winner. And so it's serious business, but they do it on Lincoln's courtyard grounds because his actual courthouse is there and the grounds are where, and they're out there. It's like, this is amazing. And then as I talk to more people, they say, hey, you're the guy writing the book. I'm like, yeah, I'm like the only black guy in town or at the events, I'm going to stand out. My wife stand out like, old corn to them. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? And it's like, hey, I'm doing this. Oh man, this is great. There was a guy that was here once and he did this and he did that. And did you know Al Capone used to go down there and hang out and hunt at the lodge at coon hounds? I'm like, wait, what? And did you know the guy on the Underground Railroad, he's buried here, and the first black guy in World War I to serve in World War I is buried out here. And his dad was a runaway slave that ran the Underground Railroad. I'm like, what? So I'm like, okay, I'm done. This place is amazing. It's Lincoln, Illinois. If you're watching, please go to Lincoln, Illinois. It's on the historic Route 66, and it's worth the drive out of Chicago to spend at least a day because the way Lincoln built that town, and it looks the same way. The town square is all original, and it's got new stuff, new businesses and whatnot. But he kept the original, and there's a lot of historical markers and things there. So that was an easy get for book 2. It's all about Lincoln and the kid. And then book 3 moves into rocket fuel. Something bad happens that changes the course of this whole conspiracy. But not only did the kid move to Lincoln, but the bad forces are following him.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they're behind. He doesn't know what's going on behind. He's living this new life, and suddenly these other people are behind him. He had no idea, but he's getting clues. I drop clues. I drop little cookies here and there, And I go back to Chicago. Hey, did you know that such and such? Hey, did you know that? And so it starts to do this. So that 3-ring circus starts to do this every book. And in book 3, the real turn happens. And then in book 4, all 3 rings are here, and it's going at it head to head. Got to get to resolution.
So what's the percentage, if you know it, of fiction and historical fact sort of throughout the books?
I want to say 80-20, but now when I think about it, it's not 80-20. It's more like 65 because on the fiction side, because a lot of the anecdotes and the characters are based off of real life. Right. So the town wrote the book for me. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like, this is a no-brainer, man.
Wow.
So the place is a hot mess, but yeah, so maybe 70, 30, 65, 45 in there where some of the characters that I crafted, this really happened. But it was great fodder for a thriller. It was like,
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's a hybrid way of writing a thriller and a historical fiction piece. So the audience may not be your typical thriller audience or your typical historical fiction audience. So, but hey, I'm putting it out there for all who love those types of things. You get two for one. It's a two banger. You get two.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are certain things that I really appreciated about the book. Now, I've only read the first book so far, but I'll be reading the rest. I
Okay,
loved the long prologue.
you did.
Be-
Okay, good.
yes,
Okay,
because it sets the stage. It grounds us into the history. It grounds us into preparation for what's to come. And I don't think the book would have had, for me, I can only speak for me, the same impact
mm,
if you hadn't written that prologue. So I'm curious as to, if did you know you were going to write that prologue, and if you didn't, sort of when did that come into focus for you that you knew that was an important thing to include?
I think after I split it up into four chunks, I'm like, there's no context to this. Like,
Hmm.
because when and I made those trips and came back and wrote the full manuscript. I'm like, well, yeah, you get these pieces and nuggets about history in this town, how it's related to this crime or these crimes, but um, where's it coming from? And that started me on my deeper dive into history of the Midwest of the United States from the inception. And one thing led to another. Like, oh, this is great stuff. This is amazing. But this is going to solidify, just like you said. I'm glad you said that. I really appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly what I was trying to do. Bring a broader context to the fiction. But as you know, and then if you checked out the prologue, there's one chapter that I say where history takes a turn, and that's why I bent the timeline uh,
Yeah.
into my cyberspace. So, but leading up to that, all that's real stuff you can look up. I won't say what it is; we won't give it away. But there, and then I kept it short. It's the history of us up
Yeah.
until a certain point, and then we take off as a nation, and then it wasn't that long ago. We got to remember, it's only
Right.
245 to 48 years ago. Wasn't That's only
Yeah.
like a couple few generations. Like, that's only a couple grandfathers back. So yeah, so I had to do that, and first it was just a little bit, and it got bigger. I said, let me, you know what? Let me take a space view. Let me just look at it from outer
Mhm.
space. And then, that goes back to 12th grade English class, just start broad and dig in. But
Yeah.
I realized that broadness was important. And you'll see that in book two as well. I speak on some natural aspects of the land that were created due to natural occurrences on Earth. The reason we have a Midwest and a bread basket, bread belt, whatever you want to call it, is because the soil is so rich. Why?
Right.
Because there was trillions of tons of ice sitting on top of it for millions of years, and da 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 da. One thing led to another. So yeah, all of that. So I play with the DNA reference a lot. You'll get play on words on DNA with me. Our DNA and the nation's DNA and the land, the ground, the food. We eat the food. We are the food. We act. Da 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 da. Legal DNA and all those things. I just play on a lot of those themes. But my editor, she said, "You're trying to be too poetic sometimes, or you're a little confusing here. Like, you didn't read the whole thing. You only got the little bit." So she said, "Oh, I'm not getting the reference." I said, "Aha," because let me show you this other part. So
Oh, that's great.
I'm glad that worked for you.
Yeah, it did. This reader really appreciates that you wrote it the way you did.
Thank you.
And the other thing I love, and I don't know why you did it,
Well,
was the little bullet points at the end of every chapter. Seriously, I'm going to sound like a real geek, but the first chapter, when I thought I was finished with the chapter and then I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's so cool. I absolutely loved it. And I learned some things. So you taught me a few things about history that I wasn't aware of. And that was so cool.
wow.
So why did you choose to do that? Did
I'm
you want to keep us grounded in real
back.
history?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
love it.
want to just let you know this is a real these are real things. This isn't something I made up. These are real things. And like you said, between the chapters, you'll get a quick lesson in something that you may or may not have been aware of. or you can take a deeper dive. I made it so it's as deep as you want to go. So you
Right.
want to read it on the surface, go ahead. You want to skim over that stuff, go fine, and I'll entertain you with the world that I created, halfway created, and then um but if you want to go deeper for us nerds who like that kind of stuff, want to dig in, I'd love that stuff, yeah, obviously. So I went and found it and gave it to you guys. Say, hey, you want to learn about the Chicago school system from the '60s compared to the '80s? What was going on in the South Side, huh? What was
Mhm.
that all about? One of the most corrupt towns in America for a while.
Yeah.
So there's no secret about any of that stuff. But a lot of people forget about it. We get caught up in all this stuff, theater going on today.
Right.
We forget about what things were like, for so many, not for everybody, not just one race of people. The whole country was just kind of hoodwinked on a lot of things. It was just the way the DNA was, just the way it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you appreciate that. It's I just trying to give you more than the one thing. I got to make I'm trying to make a mark in the game So everybody's got a great writing and whatnot, and it's like I'm new. What can I do that separates me and my works that makes it interesting and it stands out? So it'll be sought after. So, but at the same time, I'm not looking for praise. I just want to teach some people some stuff because it's like
Right.
there's a lot of stuff out here that we need to be aware of, and it's a good way to learn it is through entertainment. So we always have.
Exactly. Oh yeah. What a great way to teach. So may I ask you,
Mm.
who's your favorite character? Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. You, yeah, I don't know. You haven't gotten to him yet. The deacon. Um, the deacon is my guy. He's a nut case. It's a lot of humor in this thing. As you go forward, there's a lot of humor. In spite, it's not all doom and gloom and dark and history nerdy stuff. This,
Love it.
and I also put a lot of music in this thing. A lot of radios playing in the background of songs from the
I
'60s and
know.
the
I love
'70s.
that.
And it was like, hey, and then they get in arguments about who was on the record. I kind of go off on a tangent, but that's what it was. That's when my life was like that. We argued about who was on these records.
Yeah.
Some of it is me coming out, but yeah, the deacon. He's kind of ridiculous, but I'm trying to make him as ridiculous as possible. But he's important. But nobody likes him. They don't understand him. He's in the game. He's in with this whole caper. They brought him in reluctantly. He's like, do we have to have this guy here? I mean, and he's always like doing the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong place. But you know what? He finds a golden nugget. It's like, yeah, but listen, I got
Mm.
this. Now, can I get that? He's always on the make. He's always on a hunt. He's always got. He's a fake preacher. He's a he's a ghetto preacher. Or whatever. He's a mess. So I
Mm.
love that guy, and I love writing about him and his dialogue because sometimes he doesn't make any sense, but he kind of knows what he's doing. So I have a lot of fun with him. I don't quite identify with him. I don't know where he just came from the my life's experience of meeting oddball characters. So he's that oddball person that we run into through life, um, and he's that guy. So I really like Deacon, and I really hate the villain. I just can't stand him.
Yeah.
Um, he's as dark as you can get, and I had to go deep into some of my worst stuff to find this guy. And so
Yeah.
yeah, there's people like that out here. There really are.
Unfortunately.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did
I,
you have a favorite book of the series?
mm, I think book 3 because it takes a turn. I think 3 is where the turn happens, and I think that's my favorite. Um, I love writing the history at the one and building all that. That was so much fun building that in the first one. But you're gonna really like the second one if you like that. But number 4, where it all goes down, um, that's a close second. 3 and 4, where it wraps just because of the energy and the speed of things and the way things come together and the tropes that I throw in. I really like that from a novice perspective. I like that was the most fun. I felt most satisfied about how I was able to craft it to make that turn and to bring it to a somewhat of an end. I say that with an eyebrow
Mm.
because I'm thinking about book 5.
I wondered. I wondered. Excellent. Excellent.
Thinking about it. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's taken up all my life and changing everything around my family and everything else. It's like, but this is if people like it. I'll just base it on if people like it. If
Mhm.
it works, then I'll just keep it going.
Yeah. So I know we're running out of time here, but I'm. Why do you suppose there was such disinterest um, with Lincoln's heirs?
Yeah, in the story or in real life?
Well, let's do real life.
Well, they ran out, number one, so they came to an end.
Yeah.
Um, Robert Todd Beckwith, I think, was the last in the chain. I think he passed in the early '80s, something like that. But
Mm,
he's in the book. He has a great speech that he gives.
wow.
Um, the and so as far as Americans' interest in his legacy, it doesn't exist. So everything is focused on his life for the most part. So his heirs are gone. But in the story I crafted, at the point where fiction takes a turn, obviously I designed it that way. Now,
Mhm.
why didn't they take interest in you're talking about the offering, the bounty of
Yeah.
things? Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a story without it. So, um, well, his real son, Robert Todd, he was an ambassador to London, and he took his family with him, and he had kids there, and they're part of it. That's a real lineage. But that's where I take a turn. I create something that didn't really happen, but I made it happen to create the story. But I made it. He didn't want it. He would be the only one, the last one in the chain that would want this. But all
Mhm.
of them in my story said like, it's too much. I can't handle all that. It's just
Yeah.
I gotta. I'm trying to be like you, Dad. I'm trying to be like my grand. I'm trying to be a politician, a historian. I'm trying to build, get a house in Chicago and be an important person in the government. I don't have time for all that. That's a lot.
Mhm.
So for those who haven't read it, the bounty that this bag they're chasing, so to speak, is a lot.
Mhm.
And you have to have resources in place to deal with that, or the time and the space, because
Yeah.
it's an unimaginable amount of something. I had to make it as big as possible, and that's why I made it like, hey, it's too much. And if I didn't emphasize that enough, then maybe I need to go back and do a little bit more with that. But I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. But yeah, so that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, it's a great answer. And no, I think you did a great job of imparting the vastness of the bounty.
Thank you. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
So, what piece of advice would you give a young
Mm.
writer who is really interested in historical fiction? Because it is a lot, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, number one, if you like history, and I always say everybody has a story to tell. Whether you're able to tell it or not is the question. But if you like history, you want to do historical fiction, I say walk the grounds.
Mm,
Go to the place. That's helped me tremendously. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to craft any of this if I knew that too. I said, I can't do this without being there. I mean, some people can. They can just go on the internet and find all the information they want and go for it, and click on AI and let AI do it. But I'd say to really increase your hard drive and your portfolio, go to the locations that you want to write about, and then create stories based on reality. I think that's a lot of fun, and for people who really know a lot about that, you can really get respect from those people who spent their lives studying these things, and you don't dishonor them by writing nonsense about the historical truths that other people know a deep amount, and people who live there know even more about what maybe the so-called historian. I mean, it's just when you go places where there's DNA and history of the people are still living there, you can get a better perspective on your fiction. That's the advice I would give. Go and talk to the people who have, generations of living here, and they can give you their perspective. And then you can craft from there. And then you take all the documented stuff and these deep libraries you want to go, and to build around that. You got all the supporting stuff right there. It's already there, but you don't have those anecdotes, those little stories, those people's names, those cool things, those little, yeah. But down the street and around the corner is this hole in the ground that we didn't know what, you wouldn't even know that kind of stuff unless you go. So you have to approach it almost like a journalist to a certain degree. Just be nosy and go find those little anecdotes, find those stories, and then you can create historical fiction that can be unique.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
I think you already answered this,
Yes.
but what's next?
Gosh, this book 5 thing has been weighing on me. It's up on my board right now. I kind of already have it kind of outlined because it was coming to me, because at the end of 4, I'm like, oh man. And I learned some more stuff about the country in another location. I was like, I could move this thing somewhere else to the south and out to the west, where there were certain things that went on, let's say with the Buffalo Soldiers, and there were things that went on with the mob. And it's like, and I found these things through talking to friends in the Air Force who were stationed at these places that know about the book. Yeah, did you know that down in the da 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 da? And I started reading and digging, like, I could go there. There could be another level to the will. I don't want to get that way. Level, say, yeah, they have to do this, but with that, there's this thing that, do the Dan Brown thing, chasing the chalice kind of thing. And on the way, they discover these things in American history that nobody knows about or thinks about or talks about, especially in the Native American community. So I got some Native American aspects to this now, and some African American aspects to this stuff that I didn't know about, that are kind of, telling me, yeah, take it on the road, go hit it again. You're retired. You can drive out there and stay for 2 weeks.
Love it.
So, but I have a couple other things, and that I have a nonfiction one about African American race car drivers who are from Washington, D.C. That's a very tight thing.
Ooh.
There's a group of them here that I know of them personally, and they know of others that are this whole little club that's like, what? Yeah, did you know blah, 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 from the F1 series down to Porsches, down to BMW racing, to all these circuits. And we're in it, bro. I'm like,
wow.
Could be a coffee table book, maybe, or there's a fiction novel in every truth, So,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're going to be busy for a while.
I think so.
Yeah. I love it. I'm glad.
It's worth everyone's time to read it and get something out of it, because I don't mind putting work in.
Well, it shows. Your passion, your zeal really shows in your writing.
Thank you.
So, Michael, where can people find you as we get ready to close out here today?
Yeah, all I can afford is Facebook. So I'm a free platform guy, Michael R. Pope. You can find me there. I post a few things about Lincoln quotes, which book is out. I got to get better at that. I've been a hateful social media guy because I'm old, but I'm learning from my kids. Trying to be, I'm not on Instagram all the time either, but the books are on Amazon. Lincoln's Ghetto Series, lincolnsghettoseries.com is my website. And you can go there and you can hear some more of this babble speak about the books, and each book is described out. And I'm getting, working on building that thing up to make it more engaging, which is, that's a whole nother level. So Mike, lincolnsghettoseries.com and Amazon. Just search Lincoln's Ghetto or Google Lincoln's Ghetto, and you'll see it pop up. And and Michael R. Pope on Facebook. That's
perfect.
I do have a little group there that I just started a couple weeks ago, trying to figure out how to do the group thing on Facebook, just for those interested in talking. I try to talk literature and writing and stuff for those who like writing. That type of thing. So a couple places. I'm getting in.
Perfect. Well, I feel like we have a lot more that we could talk about. So I hope you'll consider coming back again, and I'll keep reading. So then we'll have a lot more to talk about. So thank you so much for your time today, Michael. I know you're a busy guy. We appreciate having you here, and I equally look forward to our next conversation.
Well, thank you so much for including me in your great program. And if you send me your address, I'll just mail you the 2 books. I'll mail you 2 and 3, so you can do it.
I will take you up on that.
Yeah, I'll send it right out to you.
Cool. All right.
Thank you. I won't keep you waiting. Won't keep you waiting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week, and thank you so much for today. Bye-bye.